I've been doing electrical work for going on 11 years now. In that time, I've been inside maybe 2,000 or 3,000 homes. You develop a feel for things, not in a mystical sense, just pattern recognition. You walk into enough spaces, you start reading them the way you read weather. Something in the air pressure shifts and your body knows it before your brain catches up. This particular job was in the fall of my 3rd year. I was working for a mid-sized residential contractor at the time. 6 guys, 1 dispatcher, and a rotating list of service calls that came through the main office line. The schedule had been messy that week. Our dispatcher was out sick. Calls were getting shuffled around, and more than once, someone showed up at a job that wasn't theirs. My supervisor, a quiet guy named Terrence, assigned me to a property about 40 minutes outside of the city. A homeowner had called in about flickering lights throughout the house. Standard stuff. Loose neutral probably. The kind of thing you clear up in under an hour if nothing else is hiding behind the walls. The drive out was long and forgettable. Rural roads, mostly. The address took me down a 2-lane highway that narrowed into a gravel road before terminating into a long unpaved driveway. The house at the end of it was old but not dramatically so. A 2-story colonial. White siding gone gray, black shutters. It looked like someone had been maintaining it just enough to keep it from looking abandoned. Emphasis on just enough. The lawn was cut, but the edges were ragged. A car sat in the driveway with a film of pollen across the hood. The kind of film that builds up over a week, maybe 2. Didn't look like anyone had driven it recently. Didn't match someone actively living there. I parked, grabbed my bag, and walked up. A woman answered the door almost immediately, as though she'd been standing behind it. She was in her mid-50s, plain looking, wearing a cardigan despite the warmth of the afternoon. She smiled when she saw me. There was something slightly delayed about it, maybe a half-second lag between seeing me and producing the expression. I told myself I was reading into it. I told her who I was and why I was there. She said yes, come in, and stepped aside. The inside of the house smelled of synthetic pine, something faintly organic underneath the cleaner, like fruit that had turned. I followed her through the foyer toward the kitchen, where she said the lights had been flickering worst. I noticed the furniture, the framed photos on the wall, the bowl of wooden decorative apples on the counter. All of it normal, all of it staged in a way that felt normal. She left me to work, and I opened the panel under the stairs first, checking the breakers. Everything looked fine at a glance, no obvious burns, no trip breakers. I started tracing the circuit for the kitchen lighting. I was crouched near the panel when the overhead lighting fixture dimmed for a second, then came back. Not a flicker exactly, more like the house exhaled. I noted it and kept moving. About 20 minutes in, I realized I hadn't heard her at all. No movement. No sound from another room, no television, just that particular silence that large, still spaces get. I assumed she stepped outside. Then I heard her voice from somewhere above me, low even. Not a phone call. Phone calls have a rhythm, gaps and starts. This was nearly continuous. The same cadence, repeating, pausing, repeating again. One word surfaced briefly, almost recognizable, then dissolved before I could place it. I noted it and moved on. I've seen weird houses before. Didn't want to look paranoid over nothing. I pulled the switch plate off the kitchen fixture and found a junction I wanted a second look at. Wire nuts that had been redone recently, the wrapping still clean and white against the older wiring. Someone had been in here. Not necessarily a red flag. Previous owner could have done it. Any number of explanations. But I couldn't find a permit record when I pulled up the address on my phone. The work wasn't documented. I was about to climb down from the step stool when the footsteps overhead stopped abruptly. Then the house went very quiet. I stepped down and turned to get a different tool from my bag, but she was standing in the kitchen doorway. I hadn't heard her come from downstairs. I hadn't heard anything at all. My hand stayed on the bag longer than it needed to. I took an instinctive half-step back before I caught myself. I said something like, "Didn't hear you come down." She said, "I've always been light on my feet." Same delayed smile. I went back to work. I had maybe 10 minutes left, I was under the counter checking the ground wire when I heard the front door open and close. I assumed a family member. Then I heard a second set of footsteps in the foyer, heavier, deliberate. Too heavy to be hers, and didn't match the way she moved. Then a third set, then quiet. I came out from under the counter. She was standing against the far wall of the kitchen with her hands folded in front of her, watching me. Not the way someone watches a repairman, the way someone watches something they've been waiting on. I asked if she had family in the house. She said, "It's fine." Not yes, not no. It's fine. I packed my bag. I told her I identified the issue, that I'd call in the estimate from the van and have someone from the office follow up. She didn't argue or ask any questions. In 11 years of service work, homeowners always ask questions. She just nodded and walked me to the door. When I got back to the van, I sat for a moment. The upper windows were dark, then one of them wasn't. A figure standing back from the glass, mostly shadow. Then a second shape, slightly on the left. I thought it might have been a reflection. Then it moved. I drove. I didn't call it in right away. At the time, none of it felt like something I could explain over a phone. I ran through it in my head, and it all flattened out. Voices upstairs, footsteps, a woman who stood too still. Nothing you could hand to a dispatcher and have it land right. It all sounded like nothing when I tried to say it out loud. So I waited until I was back at the office and reported it to Terrence in person. Told him to flag the address. I don't know what he did with that information immediately. What I know is that I kept thinking about it for days after, and eventually, I pushed until something moved. The wiring I found under that switch plate had been deliberately disconnected and reconnected. Clean work, done by someone who knew exactly what they were doing and exactly what kind of call it would generate. When I finally pressed Terrence about who had originally been scheduled for that job, he didn't have a clear answer. The shuffled schedule, the rerouted calls, no clean record of who was supposed to go out there instead of me. I think that's why she looked at me the way she did when I came from under that counter. Not caught, just recalibrating, like I wasn't who she'd been expecting. Police went out within the week. The house was empty. Nothing came of it officially. I still think about whoever was supposed to get the call instead of me.